So at the end of March of this year, my girlfriend and I boarded a flight from Amsterdam to Dallas, Texas via London. And at the time, I was completely unaware of what was going on in terms of immigration and customs and the whole spiel with that. I just knew that my sister had her wedding coming up and I wanted to attend. I wanted to bring my girlfriend along so that I could show her the parts of the US that I had not gotten the chance to show her the last time she'd come to the US. And I figured it would be a fun adventure. So we land in Dallas and we go to the separate customs lines because basically, of course, I'm American, she's Dutch. So I remember looking at the sign going to the customs lines, and the signs said that the waiting time for the international customs line was 5 minutes, whereas the waiting time for the domestic customs line was 20 minutes. So I figured she would get out of her customs line before I did. Now, mind you, at the time, we didn't really have cell phone reception. We hadn't really gotten our eSIM situated, so communication was very, very limited between us. And I get through my line, and I go straight to the baggage claim expecting her to be there, and she's not there. And 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, and mind you, I had waited the full 20 minutes to get through that US customs line. So we're going on about 40 minutes here, and she's not there yet. And I started to get a little bit worried. I started to get very worried, actually, because again, we had very little communication. Now, thankfully, eventually I was able to get on the airport Wi-Fi and I was able to send her a message on WhatsApp, and she was able to let me know that she was still in line waiting and that they were pulling people out of line, which was making the process take longer. And that right there was when I realized that maybe I'd messed up. Now, to be fair, even going back, I would still have taken the trip because I was not going to miss my sister's wedding for anything. I don't care who's in office. I was not going to miss that. And also didn't want to go long distance with my girlfriend for 3 months. That said, if I could go back to that day, I would most certainly go through the international customs line with her, which I actually didn't know you could do at the time. But if we ever find ourselves in that situation again, I'm just going to go through the international customs line with her to ensure that should anything crazy happen, I am there to mitigate the situation to the best of my ability. Because this person right here, I haven't watched the video yet, but based on the description of this video, she says, I actually hopped off the plane at LAX and this happens. I've entered the US multiple times with the most powerful passport in the world, which I read the comments, it's a Singapore passport. And this was the first time I got pulled into a room for questioning. So basically, they pulled her out of line and interrogated her despite having a Singapore passport. And again, that could have been my girlfriend. That could have been her getting pulled for questioning, and who knows how she would have handled that situation because it was something that neither of us would have ever expected. That said, I want to go ahead and react to this video so that I can know what to expect. Should we get pulled out of that customs line? Granted, we're not going back to the US for a while, at least for as long as Trump is in office. But if for whatever reason we did, if there was a family emergency or something like that, I don't know. I'd like to know what we're getting ourselves into, especially with the type of content that I make. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this reaction.
And I immediately get stopped by customs and pulled into a room for questioning. Basically, the customs officer was asking like, oh, so why are you visiting the United States? And she said, I don't know why I can't process your passport right now. All she did was pick up the phone and say this code, 1014. The next thing I knew, a burly man appeared beside me and said, ma'am, come with me. And he
So that is probably very, very scary. They can't process your passport. I've never heard of that before. That's never happened to me before. And at this point, I've flown into or through, I think, 4 different countries. In fact, Japan, Thailand, Spain, the Netherlands, and Switzerland. That's 5 foreign countries, not to mention Turks and Caicos and Mexico when I was younger. So that's 7 foreign countries that I've flown into their airports. And I've never had this happen before. Never had this happen to me before. So this seems like something that would be US specific. If this has happened to you in any other country, then definitely let me know in the comments. But it seems like this sort of thing is happening a lot more nowadays, and I don't really think it's a coincidence. And I can only imagine that feeling she got in her stomach when that man said, "Ma'am, we need you to come with me."
And he just escorted me into this room. They didn't say anything. They didn't tell me that I was going to be put in a room for 2 hours. They didn't tell me where I was going. I just followed him blindly. The moment you enter the room, they specifically tell you not to use your phone or any electronic devices.
Whoa, wait a minute. You can't use your phone or any electronic devices. Now see, imagine if that had been my girlfriend in that situation and they tell her that she can't use any electronic devices and I'm just out there waiting at the baggage claim for 2 hours. Just think about that. And it's not like I can go back in because I'm already through the security clearance area. So that could have been a really, really bad situation right there. I see why people were so frantic in saying that I had messed up by bringing her there. Granted, again, I don't have any regrets. I just wish that I had gone through that line with her. Because if something like that had happened and I wouldn't have been there to, again, help sort of alleviate the situation to the best of my ability, at least we get deported together, I don't know what I would do. That seems like a nightmare. And that honestly seems like it should be illegal. I don't know. I'm not too familiar with how the rights apply in airports because I think technically airports aren't actually American territory. That's what I heard. I heard something like that. But to me, that just seems more like a human rights sort of thing where you should be able to communicate with other people. Even when you go to jail, when you get arrested in the US, you still have a phone call. You can still call people and tell them that you're in jail. This kind of seems worse. Especially because more often than not, the person in there didn't even do anything wrong.
So you actually cannot tell anyone that you were detained in the room at all. Your family and friends could be waiting outside and they would be absolutely clueless as to where you are. It was a very strange situation to say the least. When I was brought into a room, it was filled with people who looked like they might speak Spanish as their first language. There was a Spanish drama playing on the TV screen.
That's definitely not a coincidence. People who looked like Spanish was their first language. So basically, people from south of the border. People from south of the American border were in that room. And this has been happening to other nationalities as well, but I imagine it disproportionately affects people from those countries. That's insane to me. That's honestly insane. And it's crazy because the same people who support this and use illegal immigration to justify this kind of behavior are also the same people who are against gun control in spite of the mass shootings. Let that sink in for a second. The contradiction there.
Up there in the room. There was no other form of entertainment. In the span of the 2 hours I was there, I saw more Europeans coming in and other Asian people with equally powerful passports. So the CPB officers were doing the interviews in the same room where all the other people were being detained in. So I could overhear all of the conversations. At no point in time I felt like the CPB officers were aggressive. They asked a lot of very intrusive questions, but in the nicest way possible. There was this Russian man. His interview was really long, and at one point in time they asked him to change out his shirt. He had to go to the toilet to change out his shirt. He came back in a different shirt and passed the shirt to the CPB officer for, I don't know, probably a swab test or something. I got an interviewer with a really disarming smile.
He had to change his shirt. What? He had to change his shirt. How much do you want to bet they put a camera in the bathroom to watch him change his shirt to see if he had anything on him? I don't know, maybe I'm just a conspiracy theorist or something, but I can't think of another reason why they would make him change his shirt inadvertently like that.
He was extremely friendly, spoke to me in a way that you would with an old friend. These were the questions he asked. What am I doing here? If I lived in the US before, why I lived in the US before, when did I meet my husband, how long have I been together with my husband, like when did we start dating? Then he started saying like, oh, you got married really young, oh, you met your husband at a really young age, that's kind of cute, do you want to have kids, when are your plans to have kids? And then he asked the most crucial question, are you thinking of moving to the US? Are you thinking of living in the US?
Why would somebody from Singapore want to move to the US? Look, I haven't been to Singapore a day in my life, but from what I've seen of it, I cannot wrap my mind around the idea that somebody would willingly pack all their shit up into a suitcase or multiple suitcases and get on a plane, a one-way flight from Singapore to the US. I just can't see that. I cannot see that personally.
That is when the alarm bell should go off in your head and then you should say no. My family, they're all in Singapore. It's going to be a big move, so probably not. And I think he understood. But the very next question he asked was extremely intrusive, and it's something that I don't even tell my parents. Can you tell me how much there is in your bank account right now?
What? Why? For what? What do you need to know that for? I wonder what happens if you just tell them, no, I don't want to tell you that. I don't want to share that information. I guess, again, since you technically don't have rights in that situation, even human rights, then they could probably deport you for refusing to comply. But honestly, at that point, I don't think I'd mind being deported. Granted, they're deporting people to El Salvador and places that they don't even come from, which is a whole different can of worms. But by that point, I would probably want to leave. I would not be too enthusiastic about leaving the airport at that point, unless I was leaving the airport on a plane to go back to Singapore or pretty much anywhere else in the developed world.
And I was like, because, obviously I don't want to tell him. This man, he wasn't going to take no for an answer. He was determined to find out how much there was in my bank account. You can just give me an approximate in USD. So I told him, and then he let me go. He probably realized that I don't have enough money to start a life in the United States, or that it can go both ways, or that I have enough money and I don't need to start a new life in the United States. Okay, yeah, but that's it. Y'all stay safe out there, and if you guys get detained, just make sure you text your family before you're put in the room, because
That's the thing though. Will you even have the opportunity to text your family? Because at that point, they probably are watching you as you're going to the room. And if you pull your phone out, they're going to think you're doing something suspicious. And they're probably going to write that down and put it in their little file and all of that other weird stuff that they do. That's crazy to me. That's really, really crazy. I can see why people don't want to go to the US in this day and age, because first impressions really matter. Now, according to her, this wasn't her first time in the US, so I can imagine this was especially shocking to her. But imagine you've never been to the US, you've been saving your money for a long time to take this trip to this country that you've heard so much about and seen in so many different movies and TV shows, and you hear the music from the country, and you're looking to immerse yourself in the culture to see how it lives up to the expectation you've created in your mind, and you get there and they pull you in that room and make you change your shirt and don't let you contact anybody. I mean, just think about that. I can imagine that right there would be very off-putting. Very, very off-putting. And I'm not saying these things didn't happen before Trump came into office. I'm just saying I never heard of them happening before Trump came into office. But what I want to know is, if you are not from the US, I have a fun little thought experiment for you. How much money would someone have to pay you to visit the US right now? Let's assume all your travel expenses are already paid for. So accommodation, you can stay in the finest establishments. You can have a chauffeur. You can even fly first class or private there. How much would someone have to pay you on top of all that to visit the US, knowing that right there, what she went through, is the risk?